All right, y'all, you're not gonna be able to see my beautiful face today just because I want to focus on the substance of the content. You the type of motherfucker that's into that shit. There's tons of videos with my face. But there's something really simple that I wanted to share with y'all that you can use as a progression scheme no matter what exercise you do or what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to train weighted calisthenics, you can use this progression scheme for your main exercise. If you're doing powerlifting, you can do this for your main exercises, so on and so forth. It's 4 sets of 8. Now there's a particular way that I like to do it on the Berserk Method. That self-coaching video is going to be linked down below. 4 sets of 8 is broken down. How are we going to do that? 4 sets of 8. Make that equal sign a little bigger. It's broken down like this. So essentially, say week 1. This especially rings true if this is an exercise that you A, have never done before, or B, you haven't done in a while. So week 1, first set of 8. First set is going to equal a top set of 8. Second set is going to be minus 8%. Third set, minus 8%. And then the fourth set is going to be minus 8%. By the time you get down to your fourth set, you're going to be down 24% from whatever your top set weight was. The reason why you do that is because what I found is when you take away, say 7, 8%, it ends up being around the same relative exertion that you had on that first set of 8. You are not going to be able to replicate the weight that you do on your first set of 8 with your fourth set of 8. If you try to use straight weight, it'll go from 8 reps to like you might get 4 on your last set of 8. You see what I'm saying? When you do a top set, you either will have to do one of 2 things. Leave a bunch of reps in reserve, or just do what I did now, percentage back down. So that'll apply if you're doing, let's just say calisthenics, because there's tons of people that ask questions about, oh, can you make a calisthenics version of the Berserk Method? Yeah, I can, guys, but the whole reason why I put out that self-coaching video, and if you watch it, it says this there too, you can apply this to anything. Just switch out the exercises, find your self-limiting variations, and then get your accessories. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at length today. I may make a full calisthenics program at some point, but ultimately, I want you to understand these concepts so that you can apply them here and there and everywhere where it's applicable to you. So that's week 1. You have your 4 sets of 8, your top set, and then your 3 back downs. Here's how you progress. I like to do it in 4-week waves. So we have a 3-week ramp up, a test, and then you start it all over again. So here's what we do. So week 2, you're gonna have a top set again. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 times 8 at highest weight. Now you can do that one of 2 ways. I'm not gonna recommend doing the exact same top set weight here on that first set of 8 as you did last week. Do like 90 to 95% of it, okay? Still pretty heavy. It's not an all-out set though. It's still heavy enough so that you can keep that thread of progression from your first top set of 8 and still maintain that element of fitness there. Your next set of 8 is going to be an increase in weight from last week. So let's just say, for example, here you had 100 pounds, minus 8% of that is 92, minus 8, so on and so forth. So instead of doing 92 here like you did last week, you just do 95, and then you'd still do 90, whatever it was here. So you increase this 1 set from last week, And these two are the same as week 1. You see where I'm getting at here? So week 3, what you would do, I'm not gonna rewrite the whole thing, we're just gonna fill in where it needs to, is on week 3, you would just increase in weight from last week as well. So you would say if this was 95 and then this was 88, you do like 93 pounds, and then this would be whatever it is. Week 4, what you'll do is you'll retest 8 rep max. And then the same thing applies down. So you're doing minus 8%. That is my go-to way of periodizing my primary press on my secondary bench day. You can apply that to your weighted dips, your weighted pull-ups, whatever you're using as an accessory to build the main movement that you're training on primary day. Now I'm doing something a little different from my usual on my primary day from the Berserk Method, but you can use that simple step progression model that I advocate for on the Berserk Method self-coaching video in adjunct in addition to this. And that's gonna give you 80% of the results that you're gonna acquire from your training. That should be a 4, fucking dyslexic. This, in addition to you just adding volume over time on that self-limiting variation, is gonna give you 80% of your results. Now let's talk about the other 20%, which is super important because I'm not saying 20% isn't statistically significant. If you got 20% stronger, or you suddenly woke up and 20% more money was in your bank account, or 20% was missing from it, you would notice that. You see what I'm saying? Let's talk about the other 20% though. So let's just say you're a calisthenics bro and you have primary day, you're doing, let's just say you're doing paused weighted dips. Pause, dips, and that's your main variation that you're training. And you're starting off with your 3x8 that you're gonna turn into 5x8, okay? And then on your secondary day, you're doing, you'd be doing a decline weighted push-up. Okay, so here is 80% of what we're doing. So 4 times 8, and then you go through that same progression scheme that we just laid out. This is 80% of the progress you're going, is 80% of what's driving your progress, meaning that if you, for example, you got kids, you're running late for work, you just don't have as much time to train, do this and then like some back work and some rear delt shit, and then you're good. You don't have to do all the other accessories. If you're in a pinch, you can keep the thread of progression going with just this. The other 20% though, how you implement that is you want to look at specific capacities that you're not working with the dips and the push-ups. What are you not necessarily working with a dip or a push-up? It's things that we talked about in that nerdy bench press video that I made the other day. Ben Yangins is not a nerd, but he says some nerdy things sometimes on Instagram. It's where you do that extra shit. You're getting most of your size and strength from these, but from here on a primary day, you could do something like a cable crossover, or cable pec fly. What that's training is the abduction and the adduction of the pec through a full range of motion. So the pec just doesn't press, it also goes out and in. It's also a function of the pecs. You don't get that to the fullest extent with a dip or a bench press or a weighted push-up. But adding it in an adjunct to these things gives you a little bit more hypertrophy for you to be able to raise your capacity in these, raise your hypertrophy so that you can raise your strength, okay? And then on a secondary day, that might be something like a dumbbell bench. Dumbbell bench, and that could be at a decline. Just because your main press is a weighted dip and a decline, it more closely mimics the angle of a weighted dip. You see what I'm saying? Keep the joint angle specificity somewhat the same, and just give you an opportunity to use a full range of motion bench press. This also allows you, to an extent, to get a little bit more of that abduction and adduction. Not to the extent that you can with a pec fly, but you trade some of that abduction and adduction for more loading and more range of motion through a press specifically. You don't get as much abduction and adduction, but you get, obviously, you're not doing any chest pressing in a pec fly machine. So we got our primary presses, and then our secondary, it could be a press or whatever, working whatever the prime mover is in that press. In the case of a chest press, it's your fucking chest. From there, you have to assess, okay, are my arms long or are they short? Right, I'm just breaking down that video Barney style for the calisthenics guys. You see what I'm saying? I still want you to watch that video, but here's supplementary material to kind of help you interpret it. If you have long arms, your arm is going through full tricep flexion and extension with each rep, meaning you're essentially doing a tricep skull crusher, breaking it down Barney style. You're doing a tricep skull crusher every time you do a weighted dip through a full range of motion, or every time you touch your chest to the bar on a bench press, or you do a weighted push-up or anything like that. You're going through a full range of motion with your elbow. Versus someone with shorter arms, you're going through a partial range of motion with your elbow. It's the difference between, we'll just use the bench for example, being parallel with the plane of the bench or being below parallel. If you're below parallel, you don't need arm work, and what your accessory could be here is something like shoulders. This is if you have longer arms, okay? Now, if you have shorter arms, you want to do shoulders and triceps. If you have shorter arms. Same thing goes for your secondary day. For here, it might be something like, it could be the lateral raises. And then it could be tricep push downs. And then on the secondary day, it could be something like Powell raises for your rear delts. And then, let's see, JM presses for triceps. And then likewise, you would have your back work here as well. So, on the Berserk Method or any upper lower split, at a minimum, you're typically gonna do some sort of back work here. Here's the thing with back exercises. I make it very simple. You don't even have to periodize them differently than you do your upper body presses. What does everybody say about pulling? You do 2 pulls for every press. The idea is you're doing a proportionate amount of pulling to your pressing. You can't literally do double because, like, if you're doing 15 sets of benching a week, you're not going to do 40 sets of pulls. That's moronic. But it should mirror it to an extent. It should be proportionate. So with that being said, you can use the exact same periodization model too. So if you're a weighted calisthenics guy, you'd be doing your push-ups and your dips. Stands to reason that on your primary day, you'd be doing something like, let's see, a 3 count, dead hang, pull up. And that can be with weight or without weight, depending on how strong you are. It's your primary day. Still follow that exact same progression. So you start at 3 sets of 8 at, say, 72%. And then you go to 5 sets of 8, so on and so forth. You go down in reps. So it could be 3 by 5 at 76 to 5 by 5 at 76. So on and so forth, whatever. Okay. Secondary day could be the exact same thing we did with our weighted push-ups. 4 by 8, inverted rows. That could be with weight at a decline, an incline, whatever. Depends upon your strength level. It's also a calisthenics movement, so it's calisthenics based. You may use weight training. You definitely should use weight training to supplement your weighted calisthenics, just like you use weighted calisthenics to supplement your weight training. But at a minimum, it's based upon your calisthenics. So here are your calisthenics movements. It's the exact same progression. So just like we covered, you have your top set of 8, and then you titrate down in weight. Now, what does that mean if like you have body weight, for example? Well, in that case, you could just do this. You could have the same kind of concept. So we'll actually talk about that. It's a good point for the guys that aren't, on the more entry level side in terms of strength. You have your 4 sets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you would just do a drop off in terms of reps until you get a little stronger. So you could have a top set of 12, then 10, and 8, then 6. And then the second week you would do 12, then 10, then 10, then 6. So on and so forth until you retest your rep max, and this time will be, say, 15, and then you do 12, 10, 8, until you get to the point where you can add some weight. Once you can add like 25 pounds, like a plate to your chest, that's when you can start doing things like first set could be a top set of 8 with 25 times 8, then it could be 20 times 8, 15 times 8, 10 times 8. See what I'm saying? Week after that could be 25 times 8, or we'll do 20 times 8. Then it'd be, say 15 times 8, 12 times 8, 10 times 8. And then you retest, and then it's 35 times 8. You see what I'm saying? Like, you can use the exact same periodization. Now, in terms of accessories, same thing. You want to think qualities that I am not necessarily training in these main movements, that after I do my main movements, I can use to supplement them to raise the ceiling and make things go faster, more efficiently. Accessory work should never be the driver of your progress. It is just like a speed booster, so to speak. So on a weighted pull-up, more than likely, you're not going to be biasing a grip that biases your lats. It's going to be something where, if this is your torso, you're angled out a little bit, and then that's how you're pulling. It's not you're pulling and then your arms are flush to your ribs. This biases between upper back and lats. It's neither one nor the other. This bias is pure lats. Now, you don't want to necessarily do more weighted pull-ups, because that's kind of like a power lifter just doing more bench. They do that to obviously get the best at pull-ups. But for general strength training, you don't need to do that to get more lat stimulus. In fact, you shouldn't. What you should be doing is something like you got 2 options. You got one, a front lever, which trains the lats and kind of that really tucked into your ribs positioning. Or 2, which is my go-to and my preferred option over the front lever, is a straight arm pull down. Straight arm pull down. Really like that because it's more of an effective range of motion. You're under the effects of gravity for longer. And then it also trains your core a lot better. But if you don't have access to that, the front lever will work as a fine option. Like I said, you're training a quality that you do not get as to a great of an extent in your main press. Not to say that you don't get it at all, but you specialize on it in here because you're not specializing on it here, if you see what I'm saying. This will give you extra lat volume in absence of your biceps, okay? Now, what does that do? It lets you focus in specifically all of your energy, none of your recovery on just lats, and none of it on biceps or your elbows or anything like that. This is more effective at training lats than this in terms of muscle stimulus, but it also leaves room for us to do things like, okay, again, with the long arm example, if your arms are long, you don't need to do bicep work. If you're going through a full range of motion, you're getting your chin over the bar on your pull-ups. You don't need to do that, especially if your arms are long. Now, if your arms are short, here's where you could do biceps. See what I'm saying? Same thing here. So where are you not training with an inverted row? Again, it just depends upon the grip that you're taking. If you're doing a neutral grip inverted row, which is what I recommend most of you do because it biases a little bit more lats, here's where you might do a little bit more upper back work. So it could be something like a shrug. It could be upright row. Something like that. And then again, additionally, if your arms are long, here's where you wouldn't do this, but you would do biceps. It's that simple. Now, I'm not going to talk about how you would periodize the accessories, but it's just food for thought in terms of how you would pick them. Because I get tons of people, and I'm always going to do it. Like if you insist upon me customizing it for you, I'm going to customize it for you. But I really want the education to be out there for you to be able to do this shit on your own. Self-sufficiency, in other words. Doesn't hurt my bottom line to make people self-sufficient. So that's the calisthenics capacity. Here's how you can kind of start to think about things that may apply if you're a strength and conditioning coach and you need to change these things on a day-to-day. Okay, this will speak to something I read on Instagram. So this would be, where are we at, 23? This is more for people who are interested in making programs for other people. Or if you're someone that just encounters like the day-to-day things that may change what you can do any given day in terms of, okay, I didn't sleep as much, so if I do this much volume, I'm gonna overtrain. Reactive coaching, reactive training. I read something the other day that said if you write training blocks out 4 weeks in advance instead of 1 week at a time, then you're not doing your client a service. You're doing them a disservice because you're just giving them their 4 weeks of training and then leaving them to interpret it, and instead of just going week by week and going off their feedback and things like that. You do not have to have one versus the other. You don't. You don't have to be that guy that writes out weekly training blocks for everyone unilaterally. I do that for some people just because that's what suits them better in particular. You see what I'm saying? But more often than not, I'm writing you a 4-week training block, and then we will adjust the plan that I laid out based upon that. You need to be able to lay out a plan in front of you in full, not only so that you can see where things are going, but so your clients can see where things are going. If you're doing things week to week and just winging it, that to me just speaks of your inability to lay out that plan than it does someone's inability to react to it. That tangent aside, let's talk about how you would adjust things. If you didn't sleep as much, you didn't eat as much, Your girlfriend sucked the dude's dick that they told you not to worry about, so you're hella stressed, whatever the case may be, okay? So remember what we say about training. You have your main work. Make this a little bigger. Main. And then you have your sub. You see how big main is and you see how little sub is? Here's what you do. If your girlfriend cheated on you and you're hella stressed and you didn't sleep and you aren't eating and you're throwing up and shit, spitting up and crying and shit all day, you see what I just did? I subtracted from the sub work. That's what you need to do. So what would that look like realistically on someone's training program? Okay, so let's just say, I'm just gonna write out what would be, gonna create in my head a hypothetical client that I'm working with, you know, just for example. So let's just say their main press is close grip bench. Close grip bench, 4 times 8. Cable row, dumbbell press, straight arm pull down, side lateral. It's the same, it means the same. It's like saying side, whatever, I'm not erasing it. Side lateral raise, aka lateral raise, because these mean the same fucking thing. And then abs, okay? Here's what you do. If your girlfriend cheated on you, your boyfriend cheated on you, you got fired from work, all this, the dumbbell press, erased. The straight arm pull downs, erased. The side laterals, erased. Boom. You have a reduction in overall training stress from removing 3 exercises. I think. 3 exercises. And then you have your main builders, your cable rows, your ab work, and then your close grip bench. This is good enough. Removing this is good enough to reduce training stress, to account for things like weekly changes, things like that. Being able to know when to do that based off of client feedback is good. So for that one workout and that 1 week, we'll see how that training reduction does for that one day. And more than likely, they're going to be able to follow the rest of whatever their plan was that week because we reduced training stress here. Even if they're still not sleeping as much and eating as much, we reduce stress so they're not as beat up on this next workout as they would be. It's that simple, guys. Like, if you ever encounter anybody that makes overly reductionist statements like that, they're doing one of 2 things. They know what they're talking about and they're just doing shit for like engagement, or B, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You see what I mean? That tangent aside, this is more for the calisthenics guys to get an idea about very simple progression scheme to use on a secondary day, specifically for a calisthenics program. But like I said, guys, if you're doing rows, this will actually be the 3rd timestamp, okay? Just because I'm dropping keys right now. If you're doing, say, rows, someone approached me the other day and they said they wanted to do it for rows. Secondary could be, hell, it could be, cable rows. And then you have your primary day, which could be seal rows. Same thing, 4 times 8, 3 times 8, 5 times 8, and so on. You go to 3 times 5, 5 times 5, and then you do your same delineation of back down set. So if you're trying to train rows as your primary variation for whatever reason, and you're not doing any pressing or anything like that, there are the variations that you could use. If you're doing overhead press, OHP, it could be something like seated overhead press. 4 times 8. Do your same workups to an 8 rep max over 4 weeks. And then it'd be paused OHP. 3 times 8, blah, blah, blah. Okay? You can apply it to anything. You always want to think self-limiting variation on primary day, and then an accessory press that trains something that you're using in that self-limiting variation that's lower in fatigue. You can apply that to anything that you're doing. Use this to supplement the Berserk Method self-coaching video. This will be fully timestamped. Y'all be easy. Peace.